Today I'm here with Trevor, and we're talking about messy worship and what that looks like. So Trevor, sometimes people talk about the difference between worship being performance and worship just being kind of present, to the moment and not being a performance. But recently there's been some language around like messy worship, and sometimes that's more in relation to getting kids involved and families involved. But I think it really translates to worship overall. So when you hear the phrase messy worship, what does that bring to mind for you?
Messy worship really probably doesn't bring the same thing to my mind as others. But when I think of it, I kind of equate that with organic worship, with real worship versus, again, some sort of performance or some sort of real show. In fact, one of the reasons that as you probably know, I didn't really grow up in the church, and I had a lot of pushback from the church because so much of it seemed to be sort of stilted, or performance had to be perfect, or high church or whatever, to the point to where you couldn't be you while you were doing it. Church was like this special place that wasn't real, and then you'd go out and have your real life. And so messy worship for me is kind of a good thing because it's real, it's organic. Sometimes there's unexpected things the way there is in life, but it's a way for people to really appreciate and experience a sense of connectedness and a sense of participation. So that's what messy worship kind of brings to my mind.
What you said, I think, is really lovely because I think it pertains to both worship and just what it means to be a church. That this possibility for church to be really organic and for people to be really authentic and vulnerable. I know I grew up a long time thinking that, like, when you came into church, not only were you dressed appropriately, but you were, like, inside, you were at your best, right? And you didn't get to let down and be yourself and show the scars and the pain and all of that. And kind of what you're saying about worship is the same thing. Like, it's okay to let the mistakes come out and to be real in that space. How do you, as a worship planner and as a musician and a worship leader, model that for people? Because a lot of us are coming in with those preconceived ideas about worship, and anybody that's ever led in a band or been in a band knows that there's often a strive to do it all right, to push for perfection. So how do you model as a worship planner and as a musician and a worship leader for others that it's okay to be real up here and it's okay to be real out here in the pews?
Well, actually, as I've said with a lot of folks before, my experience with church, of course, was different anyhow, because I wasn't really subjected to a lot of that as you described, that sort of dressing up for it and being perfect and kind of almost kind of sort of putting on a show and not being real. When I first started really seriously going to church after Catherine and I got married, when we started going to Broadway, one of the things that happened within the first 2 months that we were there was I got roped into saying that I'd go on this retreat, which at the time I was scared to death of, but I went ahead and did it, and it turned out to be a turning point in my life, because when we went on this retreat, it was to a Benedictine abbey up north, and I experienced the kind of real worship and the kind of freedom that I had never seen before. And it was like everyone could participate as little or as much as they wanted to, and everyone could do or say as little or as much as they wanted to in this space of complete inclusiveness and celebration. And then there were times in that same retreat where we experienced real vulnerability, and where a couple people had some real kind of breakdowns, and people would pray for them and everything. I'd never seen anything like that. But that affected me to the point where I became a retreat. I was after it all the time. And that has really been the model that I've always kind of had in the back of my head when I'm planning a worship service, or being even a part of a worship service, is to kind of have that sense of free and full worship. And yeah, we still follow and we do the songs and the various other things, communion and so on. But there's always a sense of community. There's always a sense of family. There's always a sense of real valid connection. And so that's the mindset that I've had. And so even when, like, we're playing in the band or whatever, I don't look upon it as a performance. I'd probably be much more nervous if I was out doing some sort of a performance in a coffee shop or something than I would here. Because here I feel like we're just family. We're just doing this. And so to me, this is just kind of a modified house church.
So you are really good at just embracing when something goes wrong in worship. You know, the wrong rhythm gets played, we skip over something, someone sings the wrong words. Like, I think you put people at ease. Like, it's okay that we made a mistake. What would your advice be for people out in the pews as they're kind of bringing their messy selves, you could say, to messy worship, kind of? What would your advice, or your words, your thoughtful words be to them about, you know, how they bring themselves into this space or how they participate?
I think, as kind of going on with what I'd said before, I think that I would encourage everyone to not think of this place as being something special where they have to behave differently. This is their home. This is a place where it's okay for them to be known, and known in every way that they are. I've actually had some conversations with a few folks that would feel uncomfortable. They'd come in here and they'd go, "My gosh, you people, there's no place to hide in here," and I say that's right. But on the other hand, that's the opportunity for you to really be known, and for you to even discover yourself even more deeply. Because lots of times, whether we're in church or whether we're in a business meeting or or meeting a new neighbor or whatever, we tend to kind of not be totally ourselves. We tend to kind of sort of put on a front, and I feel like that's one of the ways that we can really kind of really practice living a holy life, is to be ourselves, to be as true as far as who we are to others and to ourselves. I think that's what Jesus modeled most of the time, and I think that's a lot of times why he kind of blew people's minds with some of his responses, because he was so comfortable in his own skin.
I love that comment that somebody said you can't hide in our pews, because for years in ministry, what I always heard from other clergy was that the pews are one of the easiest places for people to hide, because they can look like they're walking the walk and talking the talk when they're sitting in the pew, and they're hiding who they really are. And so if somebody in our congregation is sensing already that I can't sit in that pew and hide, that says something about that sanctuary that we create with each other in this space. I think it means we're doing something right. I think it means we're connecting with God.